Good evening, and tonight on PhillyCAM Voices, the heartbreak and anger 36 years after the MOVE bombing in Philadelphia. Pennsylvania House Republicans introduced a plan to change voting laws in the Keystone States. Why some call it voter suppression. President Biden is pushing to get more young people vaccinated. How? Philly Vax is doing that right now. And an interview with Gretchen Shanfeld on World Refugee Day and the work of the Nationalities Service Center. Good evening, and thank you for tuning into PhillyCAM Voices. I'm your host, Amanda Johnson. We recently marked a somber anniversary. It has been 36 years since the MOVE bombing in Philadelphia. We also learned where some of the victim remains have been found. Reporter Tom Reese shows how protesters do not want the city to forget what they call a deadly attack.
Raymond Africa! Raymond Africa! Comrade Africa! Comrade Africa! John Africa! John Africa! Tree Africa! Tree Africa! Felicia Africa! Felicia Africa!
On May 13, 1985, the Philadelphia Police Department, in conjunction with the city and in collaboration with federal agencies, dropped a bomb from a helicopter onto a row house in West Philadelphia. The occupants of that home were members of a black revolutionary movement called MOVE. 11 of their members were killed that day, and over 60 homes were destroyed by the bomb's aftermath, a fire that was intentionally allowed to burn out of control. Margot Harry, in her 1987 book, Attention Move, This is America, explains how firefighters on the scene were instructed to not use water on the blaze. By the time the bomb was dropped, the city had already fired tear gas and used high-pressure water cannons against MOVE members in their home on Osage Avenue. It was only in 2020 that the city finally issued a formal apology to MOVE. Now, in 2021, on the massacre's 36th anniversary, MOVE members and supporters met on Cobbs Creek Parkway to march past the 6200 block of Osage Avenue and onward to Malcolm X Park.
There's a phrase that has just injected itself into our society over the last couple of months called the big lie. Well, the big lie is what has happened to MOVE since 1972. The city, the court system, the cops, the prosecutors, and yes, the media was telling big lies about MOVE from Jump Street. I'm looking at my watch, not to be discourteous, but to remember what happened 36 years ago. Because at 8 o'clock, I'm on Cobbs Creek Parkway watching Osage Avenue burn down. They talk about it as being a fire and a blaze. It was an inferno. We could see the flames jumping across the roof, across the street. While this was happening, or before this was happening, we heard the gunshots. We heard police shooting at MOVE members trying to come out of that house. And before...
What makes us believe that they will not do this again? They did it to Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, and they're doing it to MOVE in 1985, and in 2005, and in 2021. We will never forget, and we will stay on the move. This is my message to you people today, to us people today, to all the people in this country right now. We are going to stay on the move, and we're going to push for accountability, and we are not going to stop until we get it. On the move! On the move! On the move!
Also this year, MOVE members learned that the remains of 2 of their children killed in 1985 had been in the custody of the University of Pennsylvania. The school had used the bones of Tree and Delicia Africa as part of an anthropology course. Fingers were pointed at museum employees, the city's medical examiner's office, and also Princeton, as the remains had been briefly held there. The city eventually responded by asking its health commissioner Thomas Farley to resign. Writer, activist, and co-founder of the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative, Abdul Ali Muhammad spoke with PhillyCAM last month. They discussed why reparations for MOVE and other Black Americans shouldn't be a controversial topic. They said that's only one small part of what MOVE deserves. The organization has also demanded the release of political prisoner and MOVE supporter Mumia Abdul-Jamal.
There is nothing that can repair the wounds, the deep ancestral wounds that come from my ancestors being enslaved. There's nothing that can repair the displacement of my people generationally from their place in Africa, from their place in South Carolina, from their place in Philadelphia. There's nothing that can repair that, right? But there is reparations, there's money that people can not even give, that they can redistribute, right? That they can give back.
In response to Mayor Jim Kenney asking Health Commissioner Farley to resign over the city's mishandling of the MOVE remains, Abdul Ali Muhammad had this to say.
It's not enough. I think, I said that Kenney needs to resign. And not just Kenney. There's so many people who require accountability, because this is a systemic problem where there's complicity everywhere. There's complicity everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I'm talking about in institutional spaces. I'm talking about University of Penn. I'm talking about Princeton University. I'm talking about the city. Talking about the police. I mean, there's deep complicity, and that requires, this kind of egregious act requires more to be done than just to throw the health commissioner under the bus.
Speaking to the press in mid-May, Mayor Kenney said the medical examiner's office would change a policy that allows it to cremate or destroy remains without reaching out to families first. The Philadelphia Inquirer reported the following. The Kenney administration has so far promised an investigation led by Detchert LLP law firm to identify and return the human remains of all MOVE victims in city custody. Activists are hoping for full transparency and communication throughout that process. Reporting for PhillyCAM Voices, I'm Tom Reese.
Pennsylvania House Republicans are pushing to plan to change the state's voting laws. Connie Combe explores what it could mean for voters in Black and Brown communities.
Jim Crow 2.0. Voter suppression laws are being introduced in Pennsylvania and around the country. On June 16th, the Philadelphia Inquirer had an article detailing measures that Republicans in the state legislature have introduced to suppress the votes of Pennsylvanians. Republicans dubbed the bill House Bill 1300, the Voting Rights Protection Act. These measures include, but are not limited to, requiring every voter to present ID at the polls, establishing a Bureau of Election Audits to audit elections in Pennsylvania like they're doing now in Arizona, requires signature verification for mail-in ballots, shorten the voter registration deadline, and less time to request a mail-in ballot. At a recent rally entitled Criminal Justice Reborn, I interviewed community activist and former state representative Movita Johnson-Harrell, community activist Reverend John Bergen, and the district attorney of the city of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner. Here's what they had to say regarding this attempt to enact voter suppression laws into the Pennsylvania legislature.
They are wasting taxpayers' money, they are wasting taxpayers' time, they are wasting their time with creating these bills to exclude people from access. We know that most of this legislation comes from the right and it comes from the Republican Party, and that is all an attempt, a direct attempt to exclude people of color. We need to make sure that everyone has access to the ballot. We need to make sure that everyone has access and that their votes are being heard. We have too many people that have marched and rallied and died for our right to vote to begin to be able to exclude people now.
That the party that wants to hold on to the power of white people and the power of rich people wants to further restrict voting and make it harder for people, especially people of color in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and other places, to vote, and that they want to actually undermine democracy because that's what they've been doing since the founding of this country. I think the fact that our legislators want to make it harder for many people to vote shows that they're afraid of us, and it shows that they're actually afraid of everyday people exercising power in our democracy and exercising power in our society. And we need to be exercising that power more and more, not just as individuals, but as communities, as collectives of people. And that's how we actually make change in the society, is by speaking as groups and as communities and actually demanding what we want and the change that we need in order to live healthy lives, to live safe lives, and to be able to live where we want to live.
It's voter suppression. It's very simple. We have a country that is going more and more democratic, that is going more and more liberal and progressive, that believes in criminal justice reform, and the people who have the power aren't that. So they're going to try to hang on to that power by making sure that most of us can't vote.
When I asked the district attorney if he thought there was fraud in the last election that would warrant the need for more restrictive voting laws, he said,
No. My office monitors elections, and we monitor them for voter fraud, among other things. It is not any significant issue in the city of Philadelphia at all. All this talk is nothing but that. It's just talk. What we have to do is make it easier for people to vote. We have to have more mail-in voting. We have to have more early voting. And what we see when we do that is people become re-engaged. They elect the leadership they want, and they hold them accountable. I think these bills are 100% an assault on the right to vote. I think the bottom line is somebody's looking for the minority party to rule. I mean, the fact is this is a country that is increasingly voting Democratic. Younger voters are voting Democratic, or they're voting progressive anyway, and people in power know the only way to hang on is to disqualify their votes. This is a full-on assault on democracy.
The Philadelphia Inquirer quoted a Governor Wolf spokesman calling the bill an extremist proposal meant to undermine trust in elections and make voting more difficult. Wolf told reporters in Philadelphia that he's open to any legislation that increases access to voting, but he warned, if it's a voter suppression bill, I'll veto it. The activist I interviewed had this advice for Philadelphians regarding this attempt at voter suppression.
Absolutely. First and foremost, we need to get this information to the people on the ground. We need to get all of the information of the bills and what the Republican Party is trying to do to our marginalized communities, to the people who are most affected by the problem.
If you're just starting to learn about voter suppression, start talking with your neighbors, start talking with your family, start talking with your faith community. Make it an issue that other people have to talk about. And make it an issue that matters for people. And always remember that voting is one part of living in a democracy and being a part of a community, but it's not the only part. You can express your voice through protest, through organizing, through advocacy, and we need all of these ways in order to actually have a society that works for everybody.
Have a cup of coffee, wake up, because they are trying to steal your rights. And there's no way in the world people should be allowed to steal Philadelphians' voting rights. These are our sacred rights. This is the city where this came from.
This is Connie Com for PhillyCAM Voices.
The Biden administration is pushing to get more people vaccinated, especially teens. Devin Keene shows us how the program Philly Vax targets teens in the city and gets shots in arms. We provide the vax, we get the vax. We provide the vax, we get the vax.
Philly Vax ambassadors, we strive to create a diverse, informed, and creative space for Philly teens to join in with the fight against COVID-19. We do that by amplifying the voices of the teens as they plan and execute COVID-19 vaccination projects to increase vaccination education, confidence, and uptake among the teens. We equip them with the tools necessary to creatively educate their peers here in Philadelphia and beyond.
We have like social media platform like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And we post about facts about the vaccine and where you can basically take the vaccine. Videos about the myth that like if you take the vaccine, magnet stuck to your skin. And we make videos about how these are like myth is not really real and give them like the real fact about the vaccine.
Some of our group members created a skit revolving around getting the vaccine and getting vaccinated.
Yo, talking about the vaccine, can we get one? You don't know? Obviously not. Well, since you don't know, 12 and older has been approved to get the vaccine. Really? Yeah.
So I think that really shows like how it's a simple step that you can take to try and protect yourself and everybody.
They're also going out into the community and canvassing throughout the neighborhoods. They're communicating with their peers within their schools, within their camps, and things like that in order to get the word out about the vaccine and the vaccine events that we're doing and the importance of the vaccine.
And during these events, we would have like ice cream. We would have like events where we can dance. We want people to stay after getting the vaccine to have fun.
They bring along their parents, their friends, their family. So it really has a broad impact.
We have an upcoming event. It's called Vax It Ball. It's going to be a basketball clinic and a vaccine clinic together. In doing so, we also cultivate relationships with Philly Vax ambassadors and mentors to provide networking, leadership, and professional development opportunities. Relationships, if you form them, you never know where it can take you in the future. The teens have worked collaboratively with Dr. Stanford with Black Doctors Consortium. So we've done a couple of teen events with them. One of our Philly Vax ambassadors was offered an opportunity to work on the state level. Cambodian Association has offered some work to one of our teens in particular. Those that weren't even necessarily interested in health-related issues are now seeing how their interests overlap with health disparities.
This is a great opportunity, especially for me, because like I want to be like in the health field in the future. So like starting now is really, giving like the perspective.
This program, we're envisioning it to continue even past COVID because there's a lot of health disparities. And so the fact that they've been giving an opportunity to work alongside public health professionals and other leaders in this fight against COVID, it's meant a lot to them. And so a lot of them have really gained a lot of strength in this process of using their voice to combat COVID in their communities and in their families. A lot of them have formed relationships with one another. And in doing so, it's helped them even get through this time of isolation that's been imposed on us. It's really important to get the voice of the youth involved. To omit them is wrong. They're definitely going to take what they've learned and also their networking opportunities and their community engagement experience that they're getting. And they're going to use it to support them in their near and far future.
Today, we are joined by Gretchen Shanfield. Gretchen is a Senior Director of Program Operations and Strategic Growth at the Nationalities Service Center. Gretchen has been working with vulnerable adults in Philadelphia for over 15 years. Gretchen oversees NCS's Survivor Services, Health, Wellness Education, and Employment and Refugee Resettlement Programs. Kudos, Gretchen. And she is here to talk to us about World Refugee Day and about the work that she does at the Nationalities Service Center. Hello, Gretchen. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Now, talk to us about World Refugee Day. What was the inspiration and how is it celebrated in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so World Refugee Day actually started back in 2001 on the 50th anniversary of the 1951 United Nations Convention on Refugees, which really is the international standard which protects refugees, defined as those who are forced to flee their home country due to persecution. And so these annual celebrations on June 20th every year are really meant to highlight the contributions of refugees, the strength of refugees and refugee communities. Here in Philadelphia, we've had a celebration every year since the start in 2001. Last year we were forced to go virtual, but this year we were back in person. We were so excited to have two events, one in Northeast Philadelphia and one at Mifflin Square Park in South Philadelphia.
Awesome. So I know that you are able to kind of get into the experience of the refugees with your background. What are some of the things you want people to understand about the refugee experience?
So I think one of the most important things to understand is that unlike immigrants or others who may choose to move from one place to another, refugees have been forced to flee. They've been forced out of their home. And at their core, they're people who've had to make that very tough decision to, flee a home, a country, leave their things behind. We often think of this word refugee, but refugees are people. They're mothers, sisters, daughters, friends, community members. And there's a saying that I really, always think about in my work. And it says, no one puts their child on the boat unless the boat is safer than the land. And I think with all of the news of crossings of the Mediterranean by refugees and those who are forced to flee, and thinking of my own family and my son, refugees are people who've been forced to make an incredibly challenging decision, really for their lives.
What is the refugee settlement process, and how has it changed with the administration in Philadelphia?
So the refugee resettlement process actually started all the way back in 1980 with bipartisan support. Philadelphia has long been a really strong hub for refugee resettlement. Back in the 1980s, it was populations including Cambodian, Vietnamese, Laotian, and we've really continued that tradition all the way to today, where we're resettling Syrian refugees, Iraqi refugees, refugees from Democratic Republic of Congo, and a number of other countries. At NSC, we serve a really diverse population from over 120 countries every year. And we're really proud to have been doing refugee resettlement, not only since that inception in 1980, but providing services to this population all the way back 100 years. So we'll be celebrating our 100th anniversary in this upcoming year, which is really exciting. The administration change has obviously been a huge roller coaster. As I mentioned, the program had bipartisan support really up until the election of the Trump administration, when there was this huge rise in othering refugees and saying refugees don't belong here, despite the United States being really founded as a place of refuge and a place of welcome. And I think we're just now beginning to wrestle with how we fully recover from those years. The Biden administration has set a very lofty goal of resettling 125,000 refugees in the coming year. And that will really require not only agencies like NSC, but communities themselves to open their arms and welcome those who are seeking a safe place.
Now, do you guys have some events that are coming up?
We do. We have a number of events that are happening related to our 100th anniversary. So you can definitely check out our website for that. And our next event coming up is our back to school event. Our clients and families are really excited to get back to in-person school. So we'll be having a back to school event and a backpack drive later this summer.
Right. So we have a video. So let's go check out the video regarding your events.
Great.
This dark cloud will soon pass over. This dark cloud will soon pass over. This dark cloud will pass, and there will be sun, sun, sun. Said this dark cloud will soon pass over. This dark cloud will soon pass over. This dark cloud will pass, and there will be sun, sun, sun. Try it. This dark cloud will soon pass over. This dark cloud will soon pass over. This dark cloud will pass, and there will be sun, sun, sun.
All right, there will be sun, sun, sun. That was a great sing-along. So, Gretchen, what is one thing that you really want the people to know about your work?
I think one thing to take away is really putting yourself in the shoes of a refugee, imagining what your life might be like if you did have to flee. You know, what would you take with you? Some of our clients come just carrying a few things in a backpack. You know, how would it be to rebuild your life in a country where you might not speak the language or have connections or resources, and really having empathy and caring for refugees, whether it's simply smiling at someone who may look different from you on the street, or it's actually getting involved and volunteering or supporting. I think it's really important that we just recognize each other as human beings who are all just trying to build the best life we can for ourselves and in our communities.
I think sometimes people forget what the foundation of America was built on. Everybody coming together from wherever they came from and just start building. And it's a good reminder. That is definitely a good reminder. Say, just think about if you were in their shoes. How would you want to be treated? How, would you want to be welcomed? And I am pretty sure everyone will raise their hand and say, I would like to be welcomed. So, Gretchen, how would people get connected or with the association?
Yeah, so we would love to connect with those who are interested in learning more. Our website is nscphila.org. We have a lot of opportunities to get involved, everything from setting up a new refugee's home before they arrive, greeting folks at the airport, tutoring folks in learning English, a whole host of opportunities as ways to get involved or just learn more about the refugee issue.
That is great information. So if anybody wants to get involved, they have the information, they can get connected. And just if you know some words of encouragement to someone that, you know, may have a family and may not know what to do, what would be your words of encouragement to them to get connected?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with the Trump administration is that all of family reunification and people who may have come but are waiting for a family member has really been significantly delayed, and people are waiting years and years to be reunited with their children or their spouse or their loved ones. And I think it's really important that, you know, we just recognize and have patience, but also persistence. You know, we've learned a lot of things from this COVID year and from the racial justice movement that, you know, we can have patience to a certain extent, but at some point we need to push and, make sure that persistence comes through. So, you know, never stop pushing and really, you know, feel free to reach out to agencies like NSC. We're here to help.
All right. Well, Gretchen, thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure and great information.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this episode. You can watch us on YouTube and on Roku, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And we will see you next time.